what do you make of this boxing on a Fridays? Obviously, look, I grew up and you would know about sort of Friday night fights, ESPN, which was I always thought was good. Used to see some of the upcoming stars. But boxing's almost religiously been on a Saturday. We've got Crispin and Smith on a Sunday. I've always said that boxing should be every day in the week. Doesn't have to be big glamorous shows, but some form of boxing every day of the week. I think it's a good thing that this one's on a
Eddie,
Friday.
I go back to the time when there was boxing on a Wednesday night, believe it or not. And I can recall covering events at the York Hall and ringing in my copy, sitting on the steps as you go in up to the balcony after the event, actually talking my copy into the phone at 9:30 at night. And Colin Hart, the great Colin Hart, coming past and going, "Go on, son, make it sing." And there's even, you can go back to when boxing was on a Monday night, when it was on the BBC, and it went out on a Wednesday on TV, and it wasn't broadcast. So there've been changes over the decades. I like Friday night fights. It's on terrestrial TV still. It's on Channel 5, and I think that works. People go to the pub or they have a meal, and then it's on. You switch the TV on, as a certain generation still do. Once you stick the TV on and there's a boxing match on, you don't turn off, do you? It's as simple as that. You keep it on. That's how it gets big terrestrial numbers. But I think there could be boxing. Well, does it matter anymore? Are we not just... I went back and watched, because I was working last weekend and in the studio, I went back and watched Cordina and Vasquez on Sunday. And it felt like I was watching it live still, watching it on DAZN. So, I don't know, I like Friday fight nights, I like Wednesday nights, I like Monday nights, I like Saturday nights. Maybe we should have it 4 times a week, but not on a Sunday.
No, agreed. Yeah, I'm not the fan of a Sunday. I like actually catching up on boxing on the Sunday, but I always felt that every other top sport is played every day in the week, apart from combat sports, which is, again, traditionally really Saturday. So I think there's an argument to bring it back, doing it sort of every weekday. You mentioned Joe Cordina, Vasquez there. Obviously, they fought Monte Carlo in front of 300 people. Strange atmosphere, just as those events always are. Joe Cordina just getting a win, not his best performance. What did you make of it? Vasquez, obviously unhappy, thinks he was robbed, speaking about robberies and things like that. Did you give it to Joe, or has Vasquez got an argument?
Yeah, Joe had it by a point or two, a round or two. I mean, I didn't think that Joe was at his very best, but I think there was an underestimation of Vasquez. I mean, he clearly is a very clever boxer, and he took the fight to Cordina all night. Cordina answered all the questions. I don't think there's any question about that, because we expect him to be so good. The Ravkat, the Rakimov fight, the Shavkat Rakimov fight, and the Ken Ogawa fights before this really put Cordina in a very, very high place with everybody in terms of his styles. But as we are finding, we cannot judge people on the performance of a Mayweather every time. You know, there are off nights. He might have had an off night. I think he got through it. It was very tight. But he was up to the task. He just got hit a little bit too much more than I've seen him. That's what I didn't like. The kind of recklessness to be hit. And Joe's got great boxing skills, and I think he just needs to maybe rein it back in those kind of fights and go back to his movement and skills that he's got. But credit to Vasquez, he drew him into a war. And it was all about what Vasquez was able to do and what Cordina didn't do on the night.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think with Joe, because of that Ogawa knockout, I mean, look, obviously he's a puncher because he clearly knocked out Ogawa and he can punch. I just wonder if he's maybe dining out on that I can punch rather than, just as you say, going back to what sort of got him to the top, which is good boxing skills. This is an Olympian, clearly a very, very good boxer. And now they are talking about the Lee Wood fight, City Ground next year. Lee Wood moving up to super feather. Joe wants a big fight. Is this the big fight he should be gunning for? Should it be O'Shaquie Foster? Should he move up to lightweight and really gun for Shakur Stevenson? What should be the plans, do you think, for Joe Cordina going forward after this win?
Well, I like the O'Shaquie Foster fight. I think that's a brilliant fight. O'Shaquie Foster was brilliant 2 weeks ago, by the way, against Hernandez. Rescued it in Cancun in the 12th round. I think that's a brilliant fight for him to have unification. But I think for British fans and for Joe to build his kind of resume and build his standing with the British fans here and build a fan base, you could go to Cardiff, you could go to Nottingham against Lee Wood. Lee Wood's a terrific fighter. He's a favourite in that fight over Lee Wood because Lee Wood's coming up in weight. It's a natural fight to make. Wood has relinquished, he's vacated his WBA title. I think that's a very doable fight. They're both under Eddie Hearn, the same promoter. Both of those fights are viable. But I think what they need to do is, the event looked fantastic. I once went there for a Carl Froch event that was abandoned and stayed in, I think, probably the same hotel. It's an incredible place. Were you over there for it?
No, I wasn't. No.
There's a prestige about having an event in Monte Carlo. The pictures look fantastic from it. The week looked amazing. But I just think they need to build Joe Cordina as a presence. There's a big opportunity in Eddie Hearn's stable to do that. AJ looking for a fight, Conor Benn on the way back, Katie Taylor's already, taken up with Chantel Cameron later this month and probably close to the end of her career. There's a big gap in the stable there to become a star of the stable. I think that's what they should be looking at with Cordina. I think they need to put him out there more on different shows and get him on things and get him on talkSPORT, get him on chat shows, because he's a handsome kid and a great talker. And that's what I think they should do with him, as well as building the the fight resume.
Yeah, agreed. There are some fighters that shy away from doing things outside of boxing. So, as you would know, there's some fighters don't even like having interviews. They just want to go in there and get the job done. Joe Cordina isn't that. He wants to talk. He's always up for an interview. And as you mentioned, good-looking kid, speaks well, unbeaten. I think he should be getting a push because there is this gap. We don't know what's going to happen with AJ. We're not quite sure what's going to happen with Conor Benn. There's a gap to be the star of Matchroom, and he can do that. And I feel like it might come off the back of the Lee Wood fight. That's going to get good numbers. And I'm with you. I favour him to beat Lee Wood, and then hopefully it sort of kickstarts him into this next star of British boxing. On that card, and I really think she deserves a mention, was Ramla Ali, who fought Guzman, who knocked her out a few months prior. And there was a lot of questions, even from myself, like, why would you go back in there with someone that knocked you out as the way Ramla got knocked out? But look, she answered those questions. She boxed. She got the job done. And I think she deserves a lot of praise because this was a risky one. I mean, if she were to get knocked out again, then you do question her future in the sport. But she got the win. And now potentially they're looking at a world title route for her, a world title fight. She deserves a lot of plaudits, Gareth.
Yeah, also, I liked the way she did it after Guzman was sticking her face at her in the weigh-ins. It was a little bit distasteful. I mean, I say that. Obviously, the guys do it all the time. But she looked very uncomfortable with Guzman kind of invading her space, if you like, at the weigh-ins and making her feel uncomfortable. I wondered how she was going to respond to it, but she responded brilliantly, and it just shows that she is a woman who is up for the challenge when she is tested. And I thought it was brilliant to turn it around, and yeah, I completely agree with you. It's worth marking the card on that. She's got some mental durability, that woman. She's something very, very special. I mean, you and I have interviewed her. She's a very special human being. Let me put it like that.
Yeah, we are going to hear from Frank Warren in this show. We're going to talk a bit of UFC as well. You mentioned Harlem Eubank. Obviously, I know you're going to the press conference for that. You're going to be at the fight on Saturday as well. A quick one on Harlem Eubank. We are going to open up this conversation a bit more on him. But I feel like he has kind of gone under the radar a little bit, starting to get his own name now. He's been headlining shows on Channel 5, as you mentioned. He fights at the super lightweight division, 140 pounds for people wanting to work it out. But it's a good division over here. So many good names, whether it be world level names like Josh Taylor, Jack Catchall, Ahara Davies, we have to put in there now. And sort of guys coming up, Adam Azim, Dalton Smith. It's a good division to be in.
Absolutely, it's a fantastic division to be in, and you know he's got the name Eubank. He's 18-0. He's come up in a very slow but methodical way. He's got better as a boxer. He's a very mature guy. I like the fact he's got Senior in his corner, his uncle, Chris Eubank Sr. in his corner. I do like it. Chris will be very good for him. They're both very quiet characters in a way. They don't scream and shout. I think, you know, it's fantastic for Harlem that Chris has stepped in at a time when Peter Eubank has passed away. So he's got that person in his life that's still very familiar around the boxing world. I think I'm looking forward to him really emerging into the light, and I think that's what this time is. He's 18-0, as I say, as a boxer. You know, Friday night is an important night for him against Timo Schwarzkopf, who, of course, that weirdly beat Junior Witter 10 years ago in a 10-rounder, lost to Jack Catterall. Can you believe we're saying that? And, you know, the German veteran is a big underdog, but this is an opportunity for Eubank to show on the Wasserman show, on Channel 5, on terrestrial TV, in front of a big audience, that he is a Eubank who really matters. And there's talk from him, and I've chatted to him about this, about moving up to welterweight very soon to fight Conor Benn as well. Because it could be Ben Eubank. Yeah, it could be Ben and Eubank again, but it could be the different Eubank. I think Ben might struggle against Chris Eubank Jr. At middleweight anyway. I think it's a kind of Kell Brook, Gennady Golovkin kind of situation. In my view, that's how I'd compare it. Chris isn't as big a puncher as Golovkin, but I just think he's got his work cut out. He's been away a lot.
There's a big size difference.
There's a big size difference, but you know, there's lots of opportunities for Harlem, and I love the guy, and he's a very mature guy. And sometimes things come at the right time for people. I think this is coming at the right time for him.